Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first reading of our 16th season of the Milwaukee Poetry Series. Thank you so much for being here. It's absolutely great to be back in person. It was 2.5 years ago that we had the last in-person reading in this room, so we are absolutely delighted to be here and to be able to be in person. So welcome. I'm Tom Hogan, the coordinator of the Milwaukee Poetry Series. I also want to welcome those of you who are watching this on live stream, because we are having an in-person reading. We are live streaming this through the facilities of Willamette Falls Media Center. So thank you all for those of you who have logged in and are viewing this on live stream. We know that there are a lot of other demands that you have on your time, so we appreciate you being here, spending the time with us. I want to make some thanks. One is to the City of Milwaukee, because the City of Milwaukee has supported us really from the beginning, and we've been doing 16 years. Secondly, to the Reading Library for the support that the Reading Library has offered to us. We have our Reading Library representative here, Sarah Wilson, is on our technology, on our video equipment tonight from the station here. So thank you to the Reading Library. Thanks much to the Milwaukee Poetry Series Committee. So we have a very active Milwaukee Poetry Series Committee, and as you know, you don't have things that happen unless you know who people work with. So thanks to very much to the committee, to the person who is a committee member, and thanks to the volunteers who came in a little bit early and helped set this up the way it is. I want to say just a little bit about some other events, a little bit of housekeeping. If you need to have a bathroom, the men's room, they are directly across the hall, so you can just come out this way. This reading is the first reading of our 16th season, so we have a flyer. There's a flyer here, so please take a flyer. Part of the support for events like this and series like this are all word of mouth. So if you have a location that you can put a flyer up, please take it with you and do that. I'll say too about our telephonic devices. If you could make sure that you silence your telephonic devices, beepers, pagers, etc. Mine went off. Somebody called me about 6 or 7 minutes ago. The phone was sitting here, so I knew that's something that I am going to remind you about. We also have a sign-in sheet, which is right over here. And if you are not on our list, you're not getting our material, please put your name, email, and phone number on there. So we would appreciate that very much. Again, thank you for being here. And we are on the second Wednesday of the month. Here's a quote from our poet laureate, our new poet laureate, Nina Moon. She said, "Poetry is elemental, necessary, and deeply human." Poetry is elemental, necessary, and deeply human. And I find that to be very true. So that's what we're doing tonight. We're here celebrating poetry. We're going to hear some poetry from a poet. I'm going to introduce, kicking off our season, David J.S. Pickering is our reader tonight. He's a native Oregonian, having grown up and lived much of his life in the working class culture of the North Oregon coast. He received the 2020 Early Prize for his first collection, Jesus Comes to Me, and Judy Garland. Jesus Comes to Me, and Judy Garland. His poetry is published in a variety of journals, including Read Magazine, Fire Row, Raven Chronicles, and the Gertrude Journal. He says he never aspired to have his own website. So it's a bit of a surprise to him that he has a website. So you can find out more about David at www.pickering.com. He retired from a 30-year career from human resources management and continues to be thrilled about this every morning. Give him a name for that. It's called retirement. He lives with his husband in Hillsborough, Oregon. We're going to have, after the reading, we're going to have questions and answers. So David will be available to answer some Q&A. Join me in welcoming our poet this evening, David J.S. Becker.
Thank you, John. Oh, I'm so happy to see everyone and not see the people who are on the streaming. It's wonderful to be here. I was just thrilled to receive the invitation to read for you this evening. So I'm so glad you all come. Thank you so much. What my set list up. I put together the set list and I timed my reading because there are only a few of you in here who know me, but I will go on for days without some kind of guidance. So there we go. I want to thank the Milwaukee Poetry Series for inviting me to read for you this evening. And I'm so happy that it's in this beautiful library. So, when I introduce the book, it's Jesus Comes to Me as Judy Garland. One of those everyday titles. And the book was published by Early Press and released 1 year ago. It just had its first birthday. So, I'll be reading some poems to you from it, and also be reading some new poems because writers write. The poems don't write themselves. So, I'm going to start first with Broadside. This is my one and only pandemic poem. I'm so sick of pandemic stuff, I can scream. But so they wanted 20 lines for the poem, so it's a short one. What any gay man over 60 might tell you about pandemics. He might tell you about tetherball glory and being playground champ, how they teased him, how he chose it as his drag name. He might laugh, tell you to stock up on vodka, keep it in the freezer with your optimism, buy a durable dark suit and do your best not to disappear. He might tell you how little the government will think of you, your test result in Cobra premium. You might quote McLuhan, the medium is the message. Tell you to pay attention, it's all around you. A helix singing Joni Mitchell, come with me, I know the way. It's down, down, down the dark ladder. Names on a quilt, panels turned every hour, pinwheels in a breathless time. You walk away, and he might say, look down, you're already in the sea. Okay, so I'm going to start reading with the first poem in the book. My husband and I lived in the Dalles for 5 years, and I retired from my career there, and he retired from his as well. This is titled, The Dalles is as close to Portland as Eastern Oregon dares come. Even Hood River is too close. The 20 miles between Morphine Greener and more progressive Democrat every mile west. I like the weather in TD, the way the rain peters at Rowena. I like how the woman who cuts my hair has an unironic beehive and plainly doesn't give a shit. She circles me in white, New Balance, clipper precise, bitching about the hipsters down the freeway and how they wrecked a perfectly nice town, suspicious of folks without local lineage. And though she could likely kick my ass in a bar fight, she eyes me like I'm a scary clown and passes the collective trauma. Those damn Rajneeshis took over at Antelope, tried to kill us up here, poisoned the salad bar. Go look it up, you'll see. I read opinions in the local paper. The editor loves God, the Second Amendment, and not me. Not my rainbow bumper sticker, not my public displays. And after 3 years, I'm still as iffy as those red shirts when they first arrived with their bottom-on smiles, flush and buying local. Nothing much thrives in the Oregon desert without help or luck. So far removed from Portlandia, small plates and all that yoga. So easy to be swallowed in the expanse. The sky, so Catholic, I had to relearn how to breathe, to pray. I'll never speak myself to local norm, but I'll always take in the rimrock evening, absorb the benediction of dry air and red lenticular clouds. Always turn to the deep end of the sky. I've learned to see in the dark now. I can see for eons in this rolling sage cosmos. I'm not sorry. Not sorry, I moved either. My second poem is Vox. If you've done any singing in choral groups, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. And even if you haven't, you'll get a kick out of it, probably. And this has 4 musical terms in it, I'll tell you about. The first one is conspirito, obviously with spirit. The second one is incaldanzo, which is fiery. The third one is a suffix, issimo, which means more. And the last one is amoroso, which is loving. So, Vox. The instrument is testy and hard, wired to emotion. Nerves make it sharp, inattention flattens it. Ask any tenor, he'll tell you how age limits the range, how his line is toughest. He'll also go on conspirito about the flat altos, easy sopranos who always get the melody, and those lazy bastard basses who only have to show up in a tux and sing low to get laid by half the chorus. He'll tell you his is first to go, a dark harbinger for the others who hear his honey slips on the wire, watch his fall from first to second, still able to hit a solid B flat once or twice, but no longer able to live up there. The ecstatic loops above the staff, incaldanzo pushes, pulling the choral body to its apex, a split geode of raptured vowels, Roman candles of sacred sound. Well, that's enough of that. All of us who say no, tenors in general are touchy as drunken drag queens in Rome to be small. But we also remember our first time, uncool in the safety of the music room, the collective intake, the bowing of air across chords, our callow revelation at the opulent overtones in a chord perfectly tuned. Our mouths, our throats open, our bodies vibrating in betrothal. So, fraying and pitchy, we still can't help but offer it up. And when we do, we are the first notes sung in Notre Dame. Gothic vaults cupping and ringing us full of heaven. Our amoroso faces, rose windows full of jewel light. Okay. Lucille, I started writing or thinking about poetry as an art in the 90s. And Lucille Clifton was one of the first poets that I just loved. I just loved her. I wrote this in the style of her work. No punctuation, no capitalization, and I hope it honors her. Jesus comes to me as Lucille Clifton. He comes in short lines, no caps. Says the I is no more important than the rest of the letters, no less either. He wears loose cotton poetry clothes, Birkenstocks, says he loves his fro, his big glasses, generous hips, says they spin men like tops, good as ever. Still has no use for periods, though the uterus is back and he goes everywhere praising menstruation. He tells me every day something will try to kill me, tells me it will fail, tells me I am a book of light. If you know her work, you'll. I should tell you a couple of the shticks in the book. One is Jesus comes to me as different people. So Jesus comes to me as Bob Ross, Jesus comes to me as Jim Gordon. And the other one is they're poems about my family, and it's the Pickerings do this, the Pickerings do that. And this one is titled The Pickerings Try Methodist. We use the whole cube, good-looking rednecks who know how to dress, our old Cadillac dripping oil and rust in the rain out front. Even Dad is there, sweating last night's drunk into his suit. Mom is pretty in her frosted makeup and auburn 60s flip, just a little plump, but still a head turn. We stare straight down the nave at an altar set for business, a tray of wafers, shot glasses of grape juice, a brass bowl of water sweating in the warm chapel. We trudge disinclined down the aisle, Mom's eyes a thumb in our back, the room a red and purple grooves, the pastor immaculate. We answered questions, kept the sprinkle, Mom redeems. She believes in nothing more than fresh starts. We're going to say grace at dinner now, she decrees in the steamy caddy, her pink lips and green eyeshadow, her red highlights glowing in a blue cloud of smoke. Anything is possible. She could get the house clean, out of the pastoral, find a prayer that works, one that makes her husband sober, her children mind. I was a weird kid, and I grew up in Twin Rocks, Oregon, just out of Rockland Beach, and I had this whole kind of circuit of old ladies that I would just stop in and visit unannounced. I'd just show up on their doorstep, and they always let me in, and so this one is titled "At Age 10, I Am the Joy of Old Ladies." Their husbands are dead. They've continued their little shingle retirements playing pinochle and canasta and driving their old Buicks, rusty, bulbous, and passé as our tired resort town, with its bumper cars and motor forts and no reason to pull off the highway. I catch on fast. A clever partner when they need a fourth, and always happy to empty ashtrays, to refill plates of jam-stuffed cookies served on sets of 40s Heisey. My presence is unquestioned, though my preteen boy-girl body, my lazy belly and unmanly breasts strains my clothes, strains dad's tolerance, grandma's indulgence, other boys' ready inclusion. These ladies deal me in, let me have real coffee and the scoop. I know about the mayor's first wife and why Tommy doesn't look like his sister. I know Mr. Sims used to sell homemade booze. I know about Bobby, whose mom owns the Curly and Cute, how he got arrested in Portland for something I couldn't quite hear and was sent to Salem for shock treatments. The ladies touch and poo, pass me more cookies and admire my meld. Tell me I'm smart, say I'm a wonderful. Yeah. I was a demolated boy. Any of you know what that is? Somebody's nodding their head. I grew up in a Masonic and Eastern Star family. We were the only lower middle class working family whose parents had tuxes and formals in their closet. Mom and dad would wear them to lodge. And I was, when you live in one of those families, you are expected to be a Demolay boy or a Rainbow girl. My sister was a Rainbow girl. So they're kind of Masons in training, although they're not really, anyway. But this is titled Demolay Boy. I come from Masons, a long line of masters. I learned the Demolay secret handshake, how to turn square corners around the stations, how to say the prayers on one knee, trying not to laugh when Jim made fart sounds. I was not a straight boy for long. Everyone knew before I did. And once I was excluded from the comfortable camaraderie of boys, I learned to love what I could. I loved the way trees grew like fur all the way to the dunes, how land and ocean flowed into each other. I loved the way the loggers smelled of pitch and sweat when they came out of the woods, stubbled beards and unzipped hickory shirts, nests of sawdust caught in their chest hair. I loved their tired eyes as I filled the tanks and washed the windshields of their pickups. I loved the way they knew my past, asked what my dad and his brothers were up to, how my grandma was doing. I loved the way they looked in their suits at the Masons Lodge on our Demolay nights, bad ties and butch-waxed hair, their deep voices telling us how to use the mahogany box of small white balls, one black in their midst. It's easy, one ball, one vote. Put a white one through the hole if you want it, and put the black one through if you don't. Rough, scrubbed hands passing it along the line of boys, each of us given the heavy power to exclude. And I remember savoring the possibility of revenge, reliving the sneered stings of faggot, the worst word one boy can call another, as I fingered that hot black ball. I held it a long moment before putting it back, knowing even then what it was I loved about me, about them. Okay. My mother, and lipstick shows up a lot in this too. My mother always, she was a lipstick. I swear she was compulsive about it. But we always had these, you remember the Avon lady and those little white sample? Yeah. We had those all over. And this is titled Lipstick. Mom wore lipstick like religion, a prayer of smooth red applied each hour in a practiced discipline of 3 distinct movements. Kanji red in the 50s, Coral Tangerine in '63, and Frosted Pinks 5 years later. Her Avon lady left lots of samples, tiny white tubes like popcorn all over the house, easy to pilfer and stash in my room, easy to explain. I don't know, they're everywhere. At night, by flashlight, I rehearsed my own sensual ritual of color, craved the taste of scarlet, the edgy unease of crossing that forbidden line. And this one, every now and again, you read a poem for yourself. When I was putting this together, I thought, I'm going to read this sucker. So, this is titled Frequencies. Frequency. 1590 on your radio dial, KTIL. Bouncing off the west flank of the Coast Range and fading to sea, it was all we could get. Yodeling polka in the morning, Red Sylvine, Lefty Frizzell, and Loretta all afternoon, Montavani till midnight, women's news, preachers, high school ball games, and teen time, 2 hours every night but Sunday, Beatles, Birds, and Motown, and dedications to be lived down the next day. Good practice. Volume cranked, empties rolling in beds of old Chevy Apaches. We partied in hills and pastures, woke in damp sleeping bags or curled in bucket seats, did it every chance we got, scored whatever came through town and never asked questions. Walked in cap and gown out the door to a shrimp trawler or the woods or a maternity ward, knowing little more than 12 words for rain, the day after day of cold and wet, the rising lake between us and friends who left. That unspoken knowing transmitted the first time we filled the tanks of their new cars or cleaned their motel rooms, or they left us a tip at the tavern. Balancing the till at 3 a.m., sitting at the empty bar smoking an after-work pipe load, lights off, spacing on the neon beer signs reflected in the mirror, I saw every teacher's comment. He's not working to his potential. Coming to rest in my dilated pupils. Thought, damn right, and locked the door behind me. I started my old Buick and put it in drive, the radio a cosmos of static. I pressed the wonder bar, the auto surge up and down the dial as I raced 101 through tiny towns along the bay, too late for the cops, the selector stopping at faint music, a voice, then roaming again for something stronger to lock. Strong enough to cipher the meandered rivers, pierce the forest murk, strong enough to seize my 62 Electra 225 flying over Tillamook River Bridge, the sleeping radio station antenna blinking red in my rearview mirror, strong enough to carry me over the moonlit Pacific, my shadow rising and falling on swells pulsing east. This is all I can tell you. Turn off your flat screen late night Netflix and go for a ride. Take the interstate to a state route to a county road. Stop when you see only stars. Hit the search on your AM dial and listen to Pentecost wax and wane, the rushing wind, the tongues of fire. You will know what to do next. Now, Broadway Beach had the world's worst Chinese food restaurant. And it forever informed my taste for Chinese food. I love that gloppy Chinese food that isn't Chinese at all. Every small town has one, and Broadway had one. So this is titled Chinese Food. A ceramical, this restaurant, it looked like somebody went to the dollar store and bought a bunch of Asian-style decorations and just threw them in the air, and wherever they landed, they tacked it up on the wall. Yeah. Chinese food. A ceramic Buddha blesses the blue lace curtains and rust-colored Naga-hide booths. Plastic Canton lanterns throw haphazard pools of light on the indoor-outdoor carpet. Menus are exotic, lipstick promises. Outside the picture windows, happy ducks paddle through the rushes and bread crusts floating on Lake Lydell. Delicate celadon willows sway with the motor home zipping down Highway 101. Rapid-fire Chinese flies like plates from the kitchen, at once foreign and normal like the number 4 combo plate, like the spice-hot surprise of Kung Pao blooming in my mouth, like the first time I kissed a man. Okay. I dragged my husband through a wedding at my church because back when we did it, it wasn't legal, and we had done the registered domestic partnership. That doesn't mean squat. So we did it, and we had to go through the courts to change our names, but I dragged him through a wedding at my church because it was important to me. I wanted that ceremony. I wanted him to say those vows. And he's not here tonight, but he's the best thing that ever happened. Illegal marriage talk proceeded. At 5:30 a.m. on our wedding day, I was capable only of the gargle. Speech at that hour is always my slow-witted sister, yet you tease it out of me. Coherence, a miracle. Back then, our days started as they do. A recalcitrant kiss, seditious coffee, subversive time. After we trimmed gray beards and bought our new suits, on that day, we walked hand in hand to an altar floating on the Oz of Rachmaninoff's vocal leads. There, we found our voices of insurrection, cemented by rings and vows and pastor and not the law. And even today, I remain buoyant in language I know only in your context. The tough Lexus of revolution, faithful, avowed marriage. This vocabulary I never wanted. This precious articulation. This sweet Pentecostal blessing. I'm reading a few poems that I don't normally read in readings because I get in the habit of doing stuff. This is Jesus Comes to Me as Bob Ross. His voice a half whisper, he is titanium white, seducing Genesis light and happy accidents to his canvas. He says fuzzy perms will have their second coming. He's kept his disco perfect and set for hustling his color-lit dance floor palette. His Renaissance halo full of tight-shirted polyester crew. He tells me not to worry about my imperfect peaks, my florid gardens. Look here, I feel his breath on my ear, the hard K, soft H tuning the frequency, raising the hair on my belly. He dabs his cadmium yellow, alizarin crimson, phthalo blue. Look now, I see defined shadows, dazed highlights. He rubs his matter on my lobes, my breastbone, my nipples. Aphatha. Aphatha. Aphatha is commonly, or it's pronounced Aphatha or Aphatha. People argue about it all the time. And it commonly means to be open. So, Aphatha. Okay, this is a cranky old man at home. Blue Easter. Jesus, you're risen today. Can you believe this shit? If you were out with my gray hair, you'd have to wait forever for the barista too. Those dismal hip kids on Hospital Street bounce off me like pinballs, mumble sorry at their phone screens. I'd trip them if there was any sport in it. And I've been to sunrise service already. I guess it didn't work. Invisibility makes me cranky. Portland always chooses youth, any antidote to the gloom. Today is still cloudy as January, and I feel anything but ascendant. But even I have to concede the extra light diffused in the overcast. It nudges blooms in the feudal camellias, petals that last a day, then rust in the rain like Dad's old sapphire Cadillac. All fins and pitted chrome, it sucks wind like my body gasps for air when I'm lifting weights at the gym. Navy veins throbbing under translucent skin, tissues avid for aeration, lungs at capacity, brain revving. One more. Translation. I want another day. Give me another day. Hemoglobin always cries out for more, craves the alchemy of oxygen, that transformation of blue into red. And Jesus, I know it's why you keep sneaking back here unannounced. No trumpets or singing angels, just another misplaced hippie wandered up from Eugene. You're still crazy for that magic animal body left behind, for the abundant life running through it, the human hue of scarlet you can only find here. The retro lips of the girl with Ben Page bangs, her friend's cherry high-top Converse, the ruby neon sign buzzing open, the breath, the heart of the blood. And I'll read you the title poem because it's a lot of cheating. Jesus comes to his Judy Garland. Heavy-lidded Milltown eyes full of knowing how it is. He wears the little black dress she wore on Jack Parr in '62. Her last good years before the voice went and she got so weird and died in London, seated on the loop. He has a pink follow spot, says he loves what it does for his complexion when he belts them out at Carnegie Hall. Gets the people on their feet, standing on the seats, shimmying in the aisles, says everyone wants a piece of rapture to tuck and savor later, help them through the days of shrink-wrapped tweets and Pandora playlists. Jesus said he knew he had to intervene when he heard me in the 7th grade hallway singing, "Don't rain on my parade." Knew I was more of a Judy than a Barbara, and gave me a Star is Born to replace my funny girl infatuation. He says Judy knew better how to project the note, send it through whirring atoms of air, through sinew and bone to stroke the heart, and move into space where it begat glowing galaxies, gaseous clouds of color spinning red to blue to gold like the light on Granny's silver Christmas tree glinting in her living room as the Judy Garland show boomed on the TV. Just listen to her, says Jesus. I knew you'd love Judy, that she'd be your truth in your way. I heard it when you were born, your first cry, that note went spinning, created a world light years away. He points to a star, then another, and another. Look, see what you can do. You help create the heavens. He takes my hand, and I can see the pulsar I made singing The Man That Got Away in the basement, age 15, fat and greedy and flawless. The quasar I made to get happy, singing in Grandpa's old fedora, we're going to the promised land. Notes flung like solar winds, a celestial borealis flaring on my shoulders, a feathered boa of serpentine light, my fingers snapping planets and shooting bright fire. These are 3 new poems. They're pretty short. I got sober from alcoholism in 1987, and believe me, there are lots of people thrilled that I don't drink anymore. But and I wanted to write about it for a while, but it's hard to kind of get. It's really easy to write bad alcoholism. So I've written the whole time. But these are pretty good, I think. And my vehicle into that subject is Dorothy Parker, who, by all accounts, was a prodigious alcoholic. And so there are 3 poems here. Dorothy Parker and I asked the question. Oh, you should know. Dorothy Parker used to answer the phone, what fresh hell is this? Dorothy Parker and I asked the question, what fresh hell is this? Dot's telephone greeting. I likely mumbled it after pushing out of the birth canal, already thirsty and pissed, and listening for the crack of the ice in the glass, every nerve and neuron gasping at that first drink sashaying down my throat and rhapsodizing, oh, it's about goddamn time. Time to have a good time, get loose, get relaxed, get smart, pretty happy, lucky for a time, because my dark amygdala won't stop calling and telling tales. This next poem is based on a poem that is attributed to Dorothy Parker, and she did not write it. But the last line is one of her quips, and she was talking about a party she'd been to, and she said, one more drink and I'd be under the host. Which is the sad story of my drinking career. But it's in 4 parts. The poem that is misattributed to her is, I like to have a martini, 2 at the very most, 3 and I'm under the table, 4 and I'm under the host. And she was a Scotch drinker, so anyway, it's in 4 parts. Dorothy Parker and I used to like to have a martini. That neat 3 fingers of beefeaters only gets us dressed and out the door. It doesn't count. We arrive just a little late. Take our time warming up. One, a big one, gets us going. massaging the clusters and tabulating the tells, the dropped glance, the tick in the corner of the mouth, the tremor in the fingers. Two at the very most. We mingle and quip, gossip a bit. Our second big one never leaves the hand as clever assurance whips up from sophisticated crystal. Two, all makes us almost what the hostess invited, and we think we might stay here always, behaving, watching light caress the coved ceiling, that glow. Three, and I'm under the table. The third always begins with, why not? They've broken out the Plymouth and the host has a strong pour, wants to see what we're made of. Three starts the show, opens with our just kidding scalpel, deftly parting skin, moves later to evisceration, targets cut from the herd and bleeding out. Four, I'm under the host. Gentle hostesses be born after our fourth week and wreck your marriage. Even shit-faced, we retain our talent and we'll do stuff we won't. Four gets us to 10, gets us to the come to, wrapped around a stranger. Don't ask us how we got there. We can't apologize enough for the things we don't recall. And this last poem, it's based on, I was searching the internet, looking at Dorothy Parker's stuff, and Richard Avedon did a series of portraits of her in the late 50s, and 1958, and boy howdy. And, you know, yeah, she'd been living a hard life. And this has an epigram from one of her poems. Nooses gives, gas smells awful, might as well live. Dorothy Parker lived to be 73. When my shrink said, suicide is never an option, I knew he wintered in Tucson. I need 2 fingers of full spectrum, not positive self-talk. My stares tell me every day, here's what it's like to be old. And I can't begin to affirm my way out of that. Winter in Portland is full of SAD and day drinking, and if I still drank, I'd be parked in a lower companion bar because I don't like people, but I'm not a snob. Dorothy quit after her trip to AA. It was nice, but they want me to stop drinking. Today, she looks at me from 1958, Avedon shots, a baggy-faced load of vodka, scotch, and empty. She'll wait another 9 years for the venom to finally take. We drunks name our poison, death the slow way. And on that uplifting and ask me something. Oh, good. Yes?
Well, I was looking around the room, and since we're all generationally about the same age, it strikes me that your poetry may not be written, it could only be written by our generation, by your generation, because the experience of being a gay person changed so much from, let's say, 1950 to 2020.
Yeah, I think that's right. They keep calling me queer. It's like I marched in the streets to be gay. Keep changing this shit on me. Yeah, I think, well, you know, one of the epigrams on my book is lies are bad, but the truth can be made up if you know how. And it's a quote from Lily Tomlin's character, Edith Ann. And And even though, the stuff in my book isn't necessarily factual, it's all true, and it does come out of my experience of walking through some stuff. And so, what else am I going to write about? The pandemic. One home, that's it, one home. So, yeah, thank you. Did that answer your question?
Well, I guess I didn't pose it as a question, so I didn't do
But it does seem that not only generationally, but many of your poems strike all of us in one way or another, whether we're gay or not. You're talking about Pentecostal and the church. You're talking about the Avon, and that's just like deep down. And it's stuff that I haven't thought about in years, and yet all of a sudden, when you read that, it just almost made me cry. Just the nostalgia. So thank you.
Well, I think we carry around with us this cultural hardwiring that really doesn't get triggered until I open my mouth. All I have is the experience of growing up where I did and the time where I did, and having, the stuff I read to you out of the book, that's the mild part of the book. I just want to write it true, and I also am really interested in craft, and I don't want to be known as a gay poet. I want to be known as a poet who has this gay story, but it's not the only story I have to tell, and I'm working on a new book that has other things. Somebody who knows more about poetry more than I described a lot of my work as a lyric narrative. A lyric narrative, and I think that probably describes it.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the poems that you have. Jesus Comes to You, Mass. And you have several of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have more? How did you decide? How did that come about? Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, sure. The last thing I thought I was ever going to be is a practicing Christian, for God's sake. I'm gay, I've got a mouth like a truck driver, and I'm not, I'm not your typical. But I was also raised in America. I was born in 1956 and raised in America, and that again is part of my hardwiring. And I kind of had to look at that and say, okay, what do I believe? And finally, what I started to believe is that Christ shows up in many, many different forms and in many different ways. And I wanted to write a few things that kind of reflected that. So, yeah. Does that give you an answer to your question?
Well, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have more goals? Jesus comes to me as.
Yeah, I do, actually. I've got Jesus Comes to Me as, Jesus Comes to Me as Mrs. Rose Castorini from Moonstruck, which is my favorite movie in the world. But yeah, and I think all of those visitations, if you will, have something different to say and something in common to say, and I find that very interesting. And it's not something that I didn't sit down and think, okay, I'm going to write some weird Jesus poems. I mean, who does that? But also, when I did that, I had that nudge to do it. So, and if we're going to be practicing our art, then that's what we do. Because usually if I get an idea about something I want to write, and I set out to write that, it's crap. The poem has its own life, and I I finally started to think that maybe the poem has already been written, and so, that's it. Another question I saw, Greg, and
I just wanted to know where people could buy your book.
well, thank you for asking. For sale at the back of the, and I'll be happy to sell you one. So, thank you, Connie.
I have a question.
I was actually going to ask if you could tell us about the last thing that Sarah wrote about.
Oh, jeepers.
Besides Jesus.
Well, I'm trying to think about the last thing I read. I wrote it. Yeah, okay. I'm working on some other stuff that isn't done yet, and I don't know where it's going, but the last full thing that I think is pretty good. I was inspired. I went and saw a movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. It blew my mind. I mean, it blew my mind like in 1975 when I dropped acid and I read Be Here Now by Ram Dass. It was like that. Oh. And the idea that was kind of for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I was thinking about a troubled relationship that I had with my father, and how maybe across the cosmos there was another version, a better version of ourselves. And the last line is, and those bastards owe us. So, okay.
Who will you read?
Oh,
Who will you read?
I'm so nervous I can't think. Jeepers. The last book that poetry that I finished was Ellen Bass's Indigo, which was really lovely. Actually, I'm reading Connie's book right now. I'm into that, and bravo, Connie. It's really wonderful. I'm reading another one, but I can see the cover on it, but the name is like, ask me when I leave, I'll probably remember what's on But yeah, I think it's important to read, why it's important to read, and it's also, I think, really important for poets to read other poets, because I try to make myself stretch a little bit and read work that is not necessarily something I would write, although I'm writing sync with you. But perhaps the form might be different, or it pisses me off and I don't want to go any further. That's a really good sign. Okay, read some more data. Why don't you like this so much? So yeah, I don't read much fiction. I found out in my mid-50s that I have dyslexia. I didn't know, but that's why I could never get a college degree or really do anything in the academic world. I was a human resources director for 30 years. I'm so thrilled not to be doing short work. And so I have a harder time reading novels and things like that. Although I am reading in the middle of Their Eyes Are Watching God, which is wonderful. It's slow going, not like thick books are slow going for them.
When did you start writing, or did you write as a child?
No, I grew up in a lower middle class working family, and poetry wasn't anything I was exposed to at home, and I only got a rudimentary exposure to it in high school and grade school, and I have no idea why I felt compelled to write it. When I was drinking, I wrote lots and lots and lots of bad, drunken poetry that never saw the light of day, and you should be glad. And I did, but I didn't get serious about thinking about poetry as an art form until mid-90s, so 25 years ago, probably. And I had been sober for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years by that time. So, yeah, and I've written ever since then. And I continue to write, not all the time. I don't know any poet who has a daily writing practice. I just don't.
Kim Stafford does.
Well,
But he's Kim Stafford.
yeah, you can do that. I can't. But, you know, yeah, I'm at my desk several times a week working on something. And, I don't want to sound like one of those people, but, you know, poetry, this art really did save my life. It made me a whole person in ways that other things just wouldn't have. It opened me up to the world in ways that other things wouldn't have. So
on that note, that you didn't start until you were like an adult, later on in life, and you were clear of mind. At that point, when did you start? Who were the poets that you started reading that made you think, wow?
I loved Lucille Clifton's work. I also loved Linda McCarrison's work. She writes really well about trauma, and I had I had a difficult childhood, and that her writing gave me kind of an idea of how I might be able to write about that. So I ate that up, and you know, there are any number of poets that I love. And I have, you know, every now and again I'll dig out one of their books and look at it because it has something new to say to me.
Sorry, you want to end?
Yeah,
Final poem?
yeah, I'll give you a final poem. This poem was published in May in this beautiful periodical Read magazine, put out by San Jose State. And we were poor. It's not like our family went on vacations. But we did go camping at the confluence of the Salmon Berry and the Avon Rivers every year. And that place has a very, very special meaning to me. And this is titled Come Back to Salmon Berry. Begin deep. Read the understory of thicket, you can trust it. The trail will hopscotch through sword ferns and salal, lead through acid green willows, finally to the river. Go ahead, ask her name. Ask. She'll murmur, Nahum. Maybe it means umbilical, maybe sinew. You're at her confluence with the salmon berry, her quickest, coldest Shiva arm. It's early September, time for her salmon chant to the fall run, her primal mitochondrial current whispering, your birth water is home. Wade into that stream, stand chest deep and feel the flow. Feel water feathering in your skin. First a lift, then a stall. Lean a moment in perfect pitch, then glide beneath and hear again the Pentecostal improv of gush and rock and fish and surge. The language of your birth. That fresh word you heard the first time you almost drowned, and instead came gasping rapture up to air. you for your kind attention.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
That was great. There are books of David's in the back. Thank you all for being here. Charles Goodrich is going to be here in October. So, good night. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, folks.
Not very often, however.
Nice.